Hello people, my name is Mattia Vicentini from our farm, and today I would love to talk about pest management. The truth about this is that there is no bad bugs or good bugs. There is no pest, there is no friendly bugs. There are just many cycles out there in the garden, in the nature. And I think what's happening in our farms and ecosystems is that we really disrupted them. We really disrupted the natural balance. And so these imbalances are showing up with pests, with what we call pests. Let's say we imagine like a chain, and each ring of the chain is one element, and if there is some sort of balance, each element is actually keeping in check the following element, and the following element is keeping in check the following element, and so on. If we start to take off rings from this chain, then some elements will not be kept in check by anything, and therefore we will have an imbalance or pest outbreaks. In my opinion, allow me to say that the truth is that there are just imbalances. We keep doing things and putting our hands there and changing things and making a mess, and then we get imbalances. So in permaculture we have like a holistic approach to pests. We can adopt different techniques, but there is no point to call them pests because they are just bugs. What we should address is the imbalances. We shouldn't address the bugs itself or the amphibians, whatever the pest is. So I want to start quickly by telling a couple of examples that really changed my outlook on this. So once I was in Malaysia, we were doing a little garden and we were growing beans, long beans, those kind that grow 2, 3, 4 meters long. When the beans got around this high, we started to see the tips really badly eaten. They stopped growing, the tips looked burnt, and then to a closer look we could see aphids, gray aphids or green aphids. So we didn't want to spray any chemical, so we turned around and we prepared the garlic chili spray. But it takes several days, since you prepare it, then you put the garlic and chili and pepper in the water, and then you leave it under the sun for 5, 7, 8, 10 days, depends on the conditions. So while we were waiting, we didn't have anything to do, so we could just go and observe what was going on. And after a few days we could already see more ladybugs flying in the garden, and after another couple of days we could see that there were many little ladybugs larvae, which they look like little black and red crocodiles. After one day or two, they all started to eat. After a day or two, they started eating the aphids. All these little larvae were marching up and down the plants and eating all of them. So the end of the story is that by the time the spray was ready, all the ladybugs larvae ate the aphids and left the place. And after 3 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, the beans were really like growing all over the place, like nothing has ever happened. That taught me a lot. It taught me to observe, taught me that nature knows these cycles in the chain, like they are all there. Taught me that we should allow nature to do its thing. And I can understand that if I have a farm and this apple farm is what pays the bill at the end of the month, maybe I cannot afford to lose 3 weeks or 1 week, just looking at what's going to happen. That one I understand. I'm just saying that we should step back and let go of this controlling mania we have. Because the truth is that most of the people wouldn't allow this to happen. As soon as you see the aphids, you will start to spray something. You wouldn't allow things to happen. At that time, by chance, we would allow. Actually, we wanted to spray at first, but we couldn't, so we had to wait. And this wait was the time where we could learn this. And another instance was in another, when you plant little cabbage, for example, open head brassicas, and in spring and autumn you would see the purple butterfly coming to lay little eggs underneath the leaves, which these eggs become chunky, beefy, green grubs, green caterpillars, and they eat a lot of the brassicas. So every day we would go to the garden and see what's going on. Some of them we would pick them by hand anyway. What we found was that wasps, big orange wasps would come down and eat them alive. They would even carry them away. This taught me the same thing. Not just by observing, we could see that there are cycles out there. And what allowed me to say we should do is to encourage these cycles. We shouldn't try to block or even think that we know more. You know, nature has all the answers out there. We just need to sit down, quiet, and listen. Anyway, these were the two examples that really shifted my mindset badly. And I think the first way to protect yourself from pests is to correct the imbalances. Most of the imbalances coming from the soil. The soil is the core of the thing, so we should feed the soil. This means adding as much organic matter as possible, whether it's leaves, cardboard, or straw. You know, carbon. Carbon is the sponge of life. Everything happens on the base of carbon. So we add carbon and we add any other organic green material we plant. Every time we chop a tree or we chop a tomato, we don't uproot it. We just chop it and leave the roots to decompose down there. We should add EM bacterias, IMO from Korean natural farming, and we can add whichever kind of natural spray from nettle, chamomile, yarrow. We can add lactobacillus. We can add worm castings, worm juice, you know, all these ecologies to add processes to the soil. And all we are adding, you see, we are adding rings to that chain I was talking about earlier on. So everything tries to keep everything else in check. We try to bring the balance back. Not that we play to do nature. Bear this in mind. We are trying to add elements to this chain. So nature always finds the balance. Nature always moves towards balance. The incredible thing is that rarely out there is the perfect balance. Rarely. Instead, everything happens when the balance, you know, nature is moving towards the balance. The balance is nature. Everything happens here and here and here. Everything happens in the movement towards balance. So we add as much organic matter, bacteria, ecologies to the soil. We feed the soil, and then from the soil the things expand to the upper layer, for example, not the fauna and more flowers and more bugs and more microbes and so on, more cycles. So from the soil it comes up. Another thing that we should do is to select varieties. Select varieties means try not to plant any, hybrids or this sort of weak seeds. We try to plant open pollinated seeds regarding vegetables or even from trees, special varieties that work in our area. This approach also gives us more chances to not only to avoid pest attacks, but to withstand pest attacks. Because again, there is no pest, just bugs coming and eating some stuff and leaving. We saw in another talk we had in another chat, it's all about cycles. So it's not about avoiding to get any bug, it's just to withstand the bugs. And feed the next cycle. Selecting varieties is very important. We can even save our own seeds of whatever annual for 3, 4, 5 years. We just plant the first year, and then maybe some of them will get eaten, because nature knows what's weak. Nature knows what to target, what to recycle, where to cycle. So anyway, we just save the seeds of the survived one, and the second year we do the same. We replant and let go. We don't save the seeds of the one that were under attack. We just save the good plant seeds. And so on and so on. And after 4, 5, 10 years, we will have a specific variety of plant, say a tomato, which is becoming endemic of our region, no? Is specifically breed, so to speak, naturally breed though. I mean, for our garden, our farm, our space. This can help us again against the so-called pests. Another very important thing that we should do is to create spaces, niches, and microclimates. Create spaces, again, to call in these microorganisms or fauna or rodents, whatever, that wouldn't be there otherwise. Creating a space as simple as piling rocks. Piling rocks would allow some conditions, special conditions that weren't there if it was just bare grass. And because of these conditions, spiders or lizards or toads, they may nest in there, they may live in there. And this again, in turn, is gonna add rings to the chain we were talking before. Again, we add elements. Then we observe and we accept the feedback. I love this. And then we dynamically adjust to it by encouraging things that work or just wait for things to work. Dynamically adjust is a very significant way of saying it. Anyway, or even putting a big log or even wood planks, half buried in the soil, and underneath these logs or even within, plenty of microorganisms, larvae, mycelium, fungi. I mean, everything happens in there. If you think, when there is a fallen log in the bush, in the forest, the world is happening in that log, seriously. So many processes. So we are going to add again things in our little ecosystem, our farm, our garden. Creating space is something that, in my opinion, is often overlooked. But the truth is that we can really bring in, as I was saying before, species that weren't there. Species that can help us to, again, move towards the balance. Add cycles. Another very important thing that we can do is to plant flowers or aromatic plants or plants, which in turn can attract beneficial bugs or even repel some bugs. So let's say plant flowers and beneficial plants. Almost every kind of flower attracts some kind of bug. And here I just want to bring the example of the parasitic wasp. It's a very small wasp, and it loves the flowers of carrots, celery, coriander, parsley, that family. and they're attracted to this. But what they do is actually they lay their egg in some caterpillars, and then when the larva gets out of the egg, it eats the caterpillar itself. So parasitic wasps. They even sell them to help farmers with orchards, but in the orchard it's so unbalanced that the wasp will just leave anyway after a while. So we try to keep them around, and instead of buying the wasp, you could just let go to flower so many carrots and so on, and they will come for you to get those caterpillars. Many other flowers also can be used to repel other microorganisms, like the marigolds family. They have root exudates that they repel nematodes, so they can be planted with tomatoes, for example. Or another kind of plant, the pyrethrum. That plant is the base of many pesticides, chemical pesticides. But anyway, we can grow the plant itself, and we can make like a spray to use. Other plants, other beneficial plants can be simple as mint or bee balm. This ground cover, for example, they're extremely beneficial, not only just for bees when we talk about, bugs friendly plants, but they can bring in a huge array of beetles and butterflies and moths and so on. Just a lavender plant, once on one lavender plant, which was like 1 meter, a 1 meter globe, I could count more than 15 different kinds of bugs, ranging, as I said, from beetles to small wasps to bees and butterflies. All of those, again, we got to add rings to the chain to move towards the balance. Okay, so we try to feed the soil with microorganisms and so on. We select varieties to withstand possible pest attacks and to be fairly well adapted to our area. We create spaces to bring again microorganisms and add rings to the chain. And we plant flowers and plant beneficial plants again for the same reason. These things are not overnight solutions. It's an approach. It's not something we can do for 2 weeks and then we go back to what we were doing before. This is an ongoing thing. And how we keep it ongoing is by the last one, which is observation. This is really what keeps everything ongoing, in my opinion. Observation is in the examples I brought you at the beginning. Observation is what keeps us sitting there, looking at which flower are most visited and which flowers we can maybe plant next year, or to do research on what we can plant or how to feed the soil, or how can we create more spaces. Even the Bugs Hotel is another way of creating spaces, or birdhouses and so on, by research, selecting varieties. Observation is really the key. As I was saying before, observe, accept the feedback and dynamically adjust. We observe first what is going on. We can encourage some stuff or discourage some stuff. Accepting the feedback is like we accept things as they are. Like, we don't judge, we don't say this is good, this is bad, this should be like this shouldn't be like that. I often see when we plant 5 cabbages, you expect those to eat those 5 cabbages. You expect them to come up perfectly and all for you. But in nature, this does not exist. No, you always have to share something, you have to give to get. So I'll tell you a secret, which is to plant every time you want to eat 5 cabbages, you plant 15. That's a little secret. You always plant 3 times more of what you would like to get, and you will live a better life, a happier life. And it's not about being selfish, it's just that we are obsessed with controlling, that's all. We plant 5 cabbages and we want to control them 100%. If there is aphids on this one, it's not cool. So we have to spray it and we have to get rid of it, you know. Instead, if you plant 15, if some of them are eaten by aphids or whatever caterpillar, you don't get troubled. It's part of the cycles, it's a share. Or if 2 or 3 are gone because of the rodent or whatever, it's fine. You still have your little share. And this applies to everything in the garden, in my opinion. You should always plant 3 times more. You will get less headaches, you will fight much less and learn much more. Little secret. Yeah, so that said, we accept the feedback as it is, and then we dynamically adjust. Like I was saying, dynamically adjust doesn't mean to act necessarily. It means to study and try to understand what's going on. Where are we with the balance? Where is the balance? Is there any? Or which plants can we plant to favor these things? Or which plants can we plant as a bait for these bugs to bring in other bugs? You know, this sort of stuff, dynamically adjusting is lovely. I believe that this is a great approach to so-called pest management, which is funny because we could translate this is the same approach, for example, to favor life. It's not about pest managing, it's not about limiting some bugs, it's the opposite. It's actually to bring in more bugs, to enhance life processes. That's how we manage pests. So the last thing I want to say in conclusion is that there are some emergency measures, some emergency things that we can do if we arrive in a place which is extremely unbalanced and we need to open a window in between these cycles to start these things, you know. So we can use, as I was saying before, pyrethrum plants, which is a very, very powerful insecticide and must be used carefully. Or neem oil, which can be diluted and sprayed on the plants. These things are not selective. They will interact with wherever is there. And for example, neem oil doesn't kill the bugs. It basically disrupts their pheromone cycles, their life cycles. So the processes from larvae to adult, pupa and so on. You know, if you spray neem oil, they don't die. You just break their life cycle. So that gives you some sort of window to get in, you know, and try to add some of the things and try to rebalance the things in a way. Again, I want to repeat that we are not trying to do nature's work. We try to add elements and see what nature does. And other things that you can do are the sprays, you know, made with equisetum, like the horsetail or nettles or chili and garlic things. They all work to a certain extent. We can use biochar, EM bacteria, lactobacillus in the sprays on peach trees, or to, again, help trees to get rid of some imbalances or some diseases, so to speak. So these were emergency situations measures. And again, this is an approach that we keep on going with us. We don't do this for 2 weeks and then bye-bye. This is an ongoing approach, and this really will help us to live a better quality of life and to learn much more and fight much less. That we really don't need to fight, nor between us nor with nature. We can learn much more and we can pass on this knowledge to the next generation or to people that are around us. And we can have, again, heaven on earth, which sounds like heaven on earth. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you the next time. Goodbye.